What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today we're talking about my favorite fits on the offensive side of the ball for all 32 teams in this year's upcoming 2023 NFL Draft. Before we get started, I want to ask that if you guys enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me and the channel out a ton. If you're new around here and want to see more football content, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, comment your favorite fits for the NFL Draft down below in the comment section. It can be for your favorite team, doesn't have to be though, but if you are going to comment about your favorite team, be sure to let me know who your favorite squad is and what the fit would be for your favorite team. We're going to go division by division, and just so you guys know, we're doing obviously offense only. I am not doing just first round fits. This is kind of like top 100 fits. So there's some second round, some third round names we'll talk about, and then there's maybe one name that's a little bit outside of that, but we'll talk about it once we get there. And I did not double up on any players. So there are a lot of players that could make a lot of sense for a lot of different landing spots, but I wanted to try to force myself to come up with one fit per team. So just so we're all on the same page there, let's go ahead and jump into it. And we start with the AFC East. Bills, Steve Avila, to me, the best interior pass protector in this year's class, and the Bills throw it as much or more than any team in the NFL. So the fit, undeniable. I think it can be an upgrade there at left guard, or it could be your center of the future, depending on what happens with Mitch Morse, how much longer he plays. They did sign Connor McGovern, who comes with that guard center flexibility, but I think you can't go wrong with adding another guy like that in Steve Avila. So we love that fit. And then the Dolphins, I'm going to be saying that a ton in this video, by the way. The Dolphins, Darnell Washington. So yeah, again, not a first round thing, but to me, this is as close as Mike McDaniels is going to get to drafting someone like George Kittle. He's not quite the receiving threat that George Kittle is. Actually, he's not really even close to as good a receiver as of right now that George Kittle is, but fantastic blocker, great movement skills, and the upside is there on the receiving side. Yeah, you're going to have to add to the route tree, but honestly, at 6'7", 265, and with how well he moves with that frame, block, release, go to the flat, and I want to challenge DBs to tackle this guy. Because also, he knows DBs want to go low on him, and we see it all the time in the tape where he's just hurdling fools. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic addition, and again, it's as close as Mike McDaniels is going to get to drafting a George Kittle for that offense. All right, next up, the Patriots, and I'll move myself just a little bit. Broderick Jones, especially if they're going back to that old school power blocking, man blocking scheme. I think he makes a lot of sense there. And also, I'm trying to line these up and make these realistic, because otherwise, Patriots, they could use Bryce Young, right? Like, he's probably better than Mac Jones, something like that. Hopefully that makes sense. That's not the best example, but I'm trying to keep these picks in line with where they actually are selecting round 1, round 2, round 3, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, sorry. One last caveat. Broderick Jones, totally think he could make it to 14. Adds NFL size, NFL athleticism, got the frame. I mean, he looks like a first-round tackle, and I think played like it this past year. A little bit raw as a pass protector, but because of that, I think New England's kind of a perfect situation for him to go, because let's say we see him struggle in the preseason, he's not there as a pass protector. Well, okay, you'd be fine. I'm not saying it'd be great, but you'd be fine running out, Riley Reif at right tackle and Trent Brown at left tackle, and buying Broderick Jones some more time to kind of figure it out as a pass blocker, because the 1 year starting at Georgia, he kind of feels raw from a pass blocking standpoint. But especially if they're going back to that man blocking scheme, this guy is going to be a mover of people, and he's going to be able to get up to the second level. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But also, Trent Brown can't play forever. Riley Reif, 1 year contract. So I think adding a long-term, at least one of your 2 long-term tackles would go a long way this offseason for New England, and this draft really for New England. Jets, Peter Skoronski. The reason I went with Skoronski here was just because I feel like his flexibility would be really coveted there for the Jets, whether it's at left tackle because that's where they need a starter and they're going to move on from Mekhi Becton, or it's right tackle and they're going to keep Dwayne Brown and Skoronski can play right tackle. This offensive line could shake out in so many different ways in New York this year, and really only time will tell that story. But also, the guard flexibility is kind of tempting here because, Lincoln Tomlinson wasn't necessarily great last year, didn't really live up to the money that they gave him. So after year 2, if he's kind of that same baseline, I could see them moving on from him. And they also have Elijah Vera Tucker there, so like an inside tandem of Skoronski and of course I spelled Skoronski's name wrong, so apologies there. I know how to spell his name, but I just messed up on the graphics, so apologies. We'll go ahead and move on pretty quick. But I think that inside-out flexibility, whatever happens long-term, tackles and center, Skoronski just gives you options there if you are in New York. Anyways, let's get that typo off the screen, and let's talk about the Texans. CJ Stroud, this might actually be a little surprising to people. But because of his size, I just worry about Bryce Young. And, some of those passes over the middle that we see in the Shanahan scheme, are they going to get batted down? Versus CJ Stroud, who's a high-level processor, which, that scheme makes it kind of easy. You just got to be able to see the throw and make it. And CJ Stroud, to me, is actually probably the best quarterback. And, noted, not a huge CJ Stroud guy. He's my QB3. I still think 4 quarterbacks should go in the top 10, but he's my QB3. But if there is one thing he is elite at, it's processing and getting the ball out and making accurate throws. So for, Houston, I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, Shanahan offense, CJ Stroud, awesome processor, an elite passer of the football, kind of a perfect place for him to go. And, 6'2", 6'3", not having to worry about, the same issues I would have with 5'10" Bryce Young with passes getting batted down at the line of scrimmage, because, that Shanahan scheme does attack the middle of the field a fair amount. So I do worry about that a little bit with Bryce Young. But that being said, I would also argue that Bryce Young is maybe the best intermediate over the middle passer in this year's draft class. So how much should I be worried about it? Outside of his frame, I don't know how much, probably not a whole lot. And that takes us then to Will Levis. And the reason I went with him over Anthony Richardson is because I have Anthony Richardson going elsewhere, and I think that would be a really, really fun fit, and maybe the timeline kind of works out well. So Anthony Richardson, definitely a good honorable mention. And I think when you take into account, Shane Steichen, it's like, oh, we just saw him with Jalen Hurts, and once he initially took over as the play caller for Nick Sirianni 2 years ago, he taps into Jalen Hurts' rushing ability, buys him time to grow as a passer, and we obviously saw that pay dividends last year, right? So, I get it. And he could do the same thing with Anthony Richardson, no doubt. But I'm also thinking, well, Shane Steichen was there Justin Herbert's rookie year. I mean, a guy who kind of year over year got a little bit worse from a production standpoint at Oregon, but we all saw speed, arm strength. I mean, I say speed, mobility. It's not insane. He's not Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, but Justin Herbert's mobile. The size, the arm, and it's like there's certain throws where it's like, dude, this guy is accurate. Just like, why isn't it there on a consistent basis? And it feels like we're kind of talking about Will Levis when you say all that stuff. Like the arm's there, the mobility's there. He's got more NFL size than someone like a Bryce Young, right? So I think he checks a lot of those boxes. It's just like it didn't come together at Kentucky. And I could see Shane Steichen, kind of like what he did with Justin Herbert, kind of putting Will Levis into an environment, an improved roster, and then maximizing the talent around him to get the best version of Will Levis. So I think that fit would actually be really interesting, and I kind of want to just talk about it because I think so much of the narrative right now is like, oh, well, Shane Steichen, what he did with Jalen Hurts, that's so applicable to Anthony Richardson, and it is. But I think you can make an argument that so much of what came into play with Justin Herbert in LA with Shane Steichen could also be, put into an argument here for Will Levis. So I just wanted to, kind of throw that out there. But anyways, Jags, O'Cyrus Torrence. We're talking offense only here. So yeah, my favorite player to team destination is the Jags and Brian Branch. So spoiler alert, that's going to be the defensive version of this video. But O'Cyrus Torrence, man, address a big-time need on that offensive line. He's better than Ben Bartch, no doubt about it, at left guard. So we are asking him to flip from right guard to left guard, but I don't think that'd be an issue. You could also move over Brandon Sheriff, potentially, and have him play left guard. So either way you spin it, trying to find an upgrade there on that interior offensive line where the Jags certainly stand to get better. And this was a unit that has been really good at pass protection, last year, but not that great in the run game. I think O'Cyrus Torrence changed that. Not to say that he's bad in pass protection, because I actually think he handled the jump from Louisiana Lafayette to Florida pretty well from a pass pro standpoint, but he is a mover of people. He is a massive human, and he gets to the second level at he's not a slouch of an athlete. Like, he is not this, old school lumbersome, big heavy guy that doesn't move at all. He's not immobile. He is not unathletic by any stretch. So yeah, to add him to that offensive line, feels like it kind of balances those powers between pass protection upside and run blocking. And you add O'Cyrus Torrence and that middle of that offensive line, and he'll be paving the way for a lot of big runs for Travis Etienne. And then the Titans, I'm going to go Quentin Johnston. I have the tackles going elsewhere, so I'm not going to double down there, and that makes a lot of sense. But, man, Quentin Johnston, to add some additional size, but that over-the-top speed is really enticing here. And whatever they end up doing with quarterback, I think you can use Quentin Johnston as a satellite threat. Just get the ball to him in space and let him make people miss. But that over-the-top speed is what really kind of called my name here. Thought about Jalen Hyatt, but I got him going elsewhere as well. And you're a ground and pound team, and it's just like what I've been saying about the Ravens and some other squads, where it's like when you live through the run game, defenses have to cheat to account for that because you're so good at it. And adding a Quentin Johnston to Tennessee gives you that guy who, when safeties creep too far to the line of scrimmage, he can beat them over the top. So I think you're getting a guy who's a good yak weapon, but also that over the top, that burner this team stands to add, but also bigger guy. So versus, a Tank Dell or maybe a Josh Downs if you think he's fast enough, or Jalen Hyatt. I think he brings a little bit more mass to the position, which I've had a lot of Titans fans tell me they covet and they would prefer, but also just to have two monsters of a human being. Like, imagine offense where you have to tackle either Treylon Burks or Quentin Johnston. I'm not signing up for that, and I don't know how many defensive backs are really looking forward to that either. All right, Broncos, Jaret Patterson. So Denver picks at 67, 68. So I was like, this is why I was like, I had to do this in a top 100 version of this video, because first round, I can't give a first rounder to Denver because there's not going to be a first rounder that likely makes it there. And also, what is a first rounder, right? Like, I don't have Peyton Turner as one of my top 32 guys, but he went in the first round, right? So what is a first rounder, basically, the point of that tangent. But for the Broncos, Jaret Patterson, I'd be shocked if he's not available at 67 or 68. They've done a lot of work on that offensive line. Patterson comes with guard center flexibility, so whether they want to play him at center as a replacement for Lloyd Cushenberry, who really hasn't been that good since coming out of LSU, you can make that happen, or you can move Quinn Miners from guard to play center, and Patterson plays guard. So I think you have options here, and Sean Payton always covets that offensive line, especially the interior. We always saw the Saints making sure they had depth there and making sure they had high-quality starters there, and they always paid their guys as well. So to get cheaper here, take advantage of Jaret Patterson, find an upgrade for Lloyd Cushenberry. I think it makes a lot of sense there at 67 or 68. Chiefs, Dalton Kincaid, and there's a lot of guys that could have gone here, but Dalton Kincaid plus Travis Kelce. I mean, what are linebackers and safeties supposed to do against that two tight end set, right? Like, that's unfair. And if there's a guy to make the most of that two tight end offense, it's Andy Reid. I mean, one of the best OCs, one of the best play callers in the NFL. So it would kind of be a dream landing spot for Kincaid, and he's also like the perfect Travis Kelce continuation for that offense. So I think if he can make it to 31, I think the Chiefs would deliberate on this one pretty heavily. And I would love to see what that offense looks like with both Kincaid and Kelce on the field, but also keeping a strength to strength. When Kelce hangs him up, I think Kincaid can be more than enough. I'm not saying he'll be Travis Kelce, who by the time he retires, I think there's going to be a lot of arguments made that he's the best tight end in NFL history, and it's hard to argue against it. But Kincaid at least can be some percentage of that, right? Like maybe 75%, 80%. And dude, 75% of Travis Kelce is still a damn good tight end to have. All right, Chargers, Jordan Addison. I'm falling in love with this fit. And you will see it this weekend in my upcoming mock. Inside out versatility. So, and I think let's start with the speed actually, because I always say the Chargers need to add more speed. I think Addison plays faster than 4.49, and actually on the PFF NFL pod, they talked about some of the NGS, miles per hour data that they have, and he plays faster than that. So credit to them for that little nugget. But yes, he's a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter than what maybe a lot of people were anticipating. But he's a crisp route runner that gets open, with the snap of a finger. And I do think he brings more downfield speed than what they currently have on the roster with Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. So you're getting a little bit of extra speed. You're getting a great route runner who also could become your future slot replacement for Keenan Allen, who, by the way, has a cap hit of north of $30 million next offseason. So that song and dance we played this year, is Keenan Allen going to be a Charger? Is he going to be cut? We're going to be doing the same stuff next offseason. I think Addison kind of future-proofs the position. He can play inside or he can play outside. This year, I would assume he's going to play on the outside and then maybe move inside to be a Keenan Allen replacement. So, really coming around to Addison going to the Chargers. Plus, USC guy going and staying in SoCal, going to play in LA. Kind of a fun storyline there. Raiders, I'll go Chandler Zavala. I was like, man, obviously we're talking offense only, so maybe one of the quarterbacks, that could be interesting. What about the second round? Thought about Darnell Washington, but I like the Miami fit way more. And then Chandler Zavala kind of popped in my mind. I was like, you know what? He's a hot name right now. Had a great pro day, 5'0", 140, and he does it at like 320 plus pounds. So this is not one of your guards who moves well and is light. This guy is a mover of people, a mauler in the run game, pretty solid in pass pro. Oh, and very athletic. So he's looking like a second round, a third round type of guy. So if the Raiders can get him at 70, I think that would be an absolute steal, but he might end up going before then. So, maybe a little bit of a stretch here, but I think the Raiders can still look for an upgrade there on the interior offensive line. You add Zavala, he plays one of the guard spots. Dylan Parham plays the other, and then Andre James is back at center, and that's kind of your weak spot of the offensive line. Jermaine Illuminor moves back out to right tackle. But I think considering the improvements that the Raiders offensive line made down the stretch last year, adding Zavala just kind of furthers the point, gives you one more upgrade on the inside, and certainly will make Josh Jacobs very, very happy. All right, next up, AFC North, Zay Flowers. So I did, kind of put all this together pre Odell Beckham Jr. signing, but hey, we're talking offense today, anyways. And you want to talk about a scary offense? It's one with a wide receiver core of OBJ, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, and then the tight end room having Mark Andrews in it. That's a scary offense. And you want to make Lamar Jackson happy? OBJ was a good start. And of course, the pictures, the FaceTime out there on Twitter, that was basically every tweet on my timeline for about 10 minutes was that screenshot. But you had Zay Flowers as that slot wide receiver, Bateman, OBJ playing on the outside. Now we're cooking with grease. And it's another burner in the mix. Yes, they signed Nelson Aguilar, but Zay Flowers is just that cheaper, younger, less injury history, less drop. I mean, he had drop issues at Boston College. We'll talk about that in a second. But just an upgraded version and a younger version of Nelson Aguilar. So why would you not want to add it? And let's just give Lamar Jackson all the weapons. And let's just give defenses all the headaches, because those three wide receivers plus Lamar Jackson's running ability, assuming he is back in Baltimore, I don't know how you contain that offense. I mean, as long as Lamar, is like a 60%, completion percentage type of passer next year, with those weapons, Ravens are going to be a force to be reckoned with. I do want to talk about the drops for Zay Flowers, because it is something I hear a fair amount, and it's a bit of a concern. Go and watch them. I don't think any of them are like stone cold drops where like Zay Flowers is watching it come in and it's just clunk, there it goes. It's more so like an equivalent to what I would talk about with Jahmyr Gibbs when he was at Georgia Tech, where it felt like a guy had to carry a team. In Boston College, objectively speaking, not a very good program. And how many wide receivers from Boston College have we talked about as first-round talents? Not many, if any, during my lifetime. And a lot of those drops feel like he's trying to turn upfield, and he just takes his eyes off the ball at the worst possible last second and starts to make a move upfield. If he just washes those in and then turn cuts, I mean, he's a freaky athlete. He doesn't need, to try to cheat and, start looking upfield any early. Like, once he gets the ball in his hands, I think he's got plenty of athletic ability to be a threat. So, I think at the NFL level, just watch it in, keep your eye on the ball for literally half a second longer, a quarter of a second longer even, and you'll see a lot of those drops kind of dissipate, go by the wayside. Anyways, long tangent aside, Michael Mayer of the Bengals. I talked about this in the reaction to Sam Monson's mock. Actually, that is not up on the channel yet, so I will talk about this later. But great fit from a blocking standpoint and pass catch upside. He's kind of that perfect world where they could go Darnell Washington, see if they can tap into the receiving ability, get a sixth offensive lineman. That's really appealing. Or they could go Dalton Kincaid, get strictly the receiving, kind of tight end build, and maybe there's room for him to grow as a blocker. I would just split the difference, go Michael Mayer. Not the most insane athlete, but an absolute contested catch monster. And also a really good blocker in a phone booth. So I think he kind of gives you both of what you need. If they do move on from Tyler Boyd next offseason, this is a perfect replacement as that over-the-field weapon. And then again, the blocking upside is hard to argue here for Cincy. Then we get the Browns. I'm going to go Jonathan Mingo. So this is kind of that third round. I was like, maybe he can make it there. Maybe he goes before it. I know Mingo's a hot name right now, so maybe he doesn't make it all the way to the third round. But I was just thinking about it, and I was like, man, Elijah Moore, I like that addition, but no guarantee. We haven't really seen him hit the upside of his potential. Really like Amari Cooper. And then there's Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's kind of one note, right? Like, he's a big, fast, field-stretching, vertical-based wide receiver. He runs goes posts and comebacks off of it. Could you do a little bit more there? And I look at Jonathan Mingo, and I'm like, they kind of use him as a yak weapon primarily. Didn't get to see a whole lot of production deep down the field, but you watch the tape, this guy knows how to stack corners. He's got the size, mid 4.4 speed. Like, he's got all those traits you're looking for to be someone who does more than just the yak game. So I think he's an interesting addition, and basically could be that third fiddle, maybe second fiddle in that Cleveland offense that just does more than Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's not just that one-note vertical wide receiver. He's bringing that, a little bit of an intermediate threat, but also a lot of yak ability. So I think he just adds more well-rounded nature to that wide receiver room, in addition to Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore. And then, worst comes to worst, like Donovan Peoples-Jones is a fine wide receiver for right out the rest of his contract, and let him hit the market, let someone else pay him once he's a free agent. Steelers, I'm going to go Anton Harrison. This is strictly, my fit, what I think are the best landing spots for these guys, and where I would want to see these offensive players land, and what offensive players I think make the most impact for these teams. This is not necessarily me saying I think this is what they are going to do, and that will certainly become more and more applicable in some other fits here. I don't think the Steelers want Anton Harrison. I think they want a DeJuan Jones over Harrison. I think they want Darnell Wright. I think they would prefer Broderick Jones. Strictly speculation on all that. But I think they'd prefer one of these big body movers of people, kind of fit that power run game image when you draft a Najee Harris. That's kind of the thought that comes to mind as this big mauler, movers of people across the offensive line. And I do think that's what Pittsburgh would prefer to add at 17. But to me, get the best pass protector of those second-tier tackles. Like Paris Johnson Jr. is my OT1. I love him. Peter Skoronski is battle-tested, and I can really respect, despite the arm length, how good of a pass protector he is. So then the conversation is Harrison, Wright, DeJuan Jones, and Broderick Jones. Where do we go there? And Harrison, to me, is the best pass protector of those four. 3-year starter at Oklahoma, and he's also battle-tested from that standpoint. Lots of reps under his belt. And plus I like the athletic ability. He's more than capable of getting up to the second level. Could he add more strength? Sure, but I think you naturally can get that out of someone once they go from college to NFL. Like, I think naturally that workouts, change of environment and that strength and conditioning step up is going to naturally do some of that work for you. So would love to see Pittsburgh make this pick. I think they're looking for a different type of tackle, but to me, this is the best pass protector for Kenny Pickett of those four, so that's why I went in this direction. All right, next up, Cowboys, Bijan Robinson. I mean, I don't think I need to argue with any Cowboys fans on this one. I think they all pretty much would love this type of selection if it came down on draft night, and actually, there are not a lot of fan bases that like when I make trades for them moving up, but when I've had the Cowboys move up for Bijan Robinson, almost every Cowboys fan's like, yeah, I'm here for it. Like, let's do it. Like, if it only costs a third and a fourth, like, let's go get them. So I if you're a Cowboys fan and you think otherwise, let me hear your thoughts. I'm not trying to deter your opinion whatsoever. But this feels like the guy that, once we get to the teens, I think Jerry and Stephen Jones are making calls because they want to add this shiny toy to their offense. And Zeke, unfortunately that came into a kind of a rough close. So I think Jerry Jones is looking to replace that and make a splash move as a replacement. Let's forget about Zeke. We got Bijan, we got that upgrade. The pass catching upside's hard to deny too. You add him into an offense that already features CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks coming over from Houston. Jalen Tolbert, untapped potential to get there, and Michael Gallup making $10+ million a year. You're just adding more and more weapons around Dak Prescott, which I think should be the MO. And they have an opening at that, starting running back spot. So I think the fit is kind of undeniable there in Dallas. Giants, John Michael Schmitz. You're starting to see this a whole lot in mock drafts. Him or Joe Tippmann. The center is kind of that last spot in the O-line. I think they can get better at left guard. But center stands out right now as they gotta do something about that. So whether it's round 1, round 2, I'd love to see them add a center. John Michael Schmitz, Joe Tippmann, or Luke Whippler. I'd be fine with any of those three. I do think JMS is probably the best of those three. I think he's a great scheme fit, great on those reach blocks, looked really good at the Senior Bowl, plays bigger than 302 pounds or whatever he weighed in at the Combine. So I think he's kind of a perfect addition to that Giants offensive line. And over the last 3 off seasons, they've been trying to overhaul and fix up that offensive line. I think you add JMS and you're pretty much done. And then we get to the Eagles, Cody Mauch. So this was another one where I was like, maybe Chandler Zavala could be an interesting fit here. But my thinking was there are a few franchises that draft and develop offensive linemen better than Philadelphia. i.e. the 7th round pick, former rugby player Jordan Mailata becoming one of the best tackles in football, right? Some of that's Mailata putting in the work and becoming a good player, and some of it's Philadelphia, right? Giving him the right coaching. So I look at Cody Mauch, guard center flexibility. I'm focusing on him being a guard right now. They lose Isaac Seumalo. That right guard position is up for grabs. And Cody Mauch, great on the move. If he is pulling and he's got his sights set on you, just get out of the way because you do not want any of it. And then he's a work in progress as a pass protector. So I'm thinking, man, if he goes to Philadelphia, that's the spot to get him to make those necessary improvements in pass pro. And then you're just talking about a great athlete who is an absolute force in the run game. So kind of feels like it matches up everything that Philadelphia has done in the past with offensive linemen while also addressing a current area of need where I think they can stand to get an upgrade. Then the Commanders, Antonio Mafi. Now this is the one where I'm like, is he a top 100 pick? I don't really see him in a whole lot of 3-round mocks anymore. I know some of the guys from the Draft Network have talked about some of his meetings and have spoken highly about him. And I know he's caught some interest from teams, and he's had some meetings with some different squads. this was one where it's like all the interior offensive linemen kind of went by the wayside, and I had better fit, so I was left kind of scratching my head with the Commanders. But that being said, this is an Andrew Norwell replacement through and through, and this is a team that Ron Rivera's talking about. We want to be a 2-to-1 run-to-pass ratio. Now, some of that is obviously coach speak, but I think some of that is, a former linebacker as a head coach talking, and a guy that has always had good defenses, and that's always kind of been the ideology. I mean, I remember the D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart days in Carolina, right? Like, they want to win through the ground game. And you have first-year starter Sam Howell, right? Like, assuming he does win the starting job, go a long way having a good run game kind of boosting him up. So Tony Amafe gives you a really solid mover of people, big, strong left guard, upgrade over Andrew Norwell, and then you can keep, Andrew Wiley, or you can keep and Sam Cosmi, on the right side. Wiley at tackle, Cosmi at guard. So I think this kind of fixes up that one spot. I think they still could get an upgrade at. And then that takes us to the NFC South. Falcons, I'm going to stick with Marvin Mims here. I know they added Scotty Miller, but I just want better. I'm sorry, Scotty Miller. I've fallen victim to that too many times, getting excited about what he could be, and it's just ultimately, I don't think, the answer. So go draft another guy who's a burner. 4.38 40 for Marvin Mims. Think he can play inside or out. But let's just say he plays the slot. You already have Drake London, Mac Hollins, who can play on the outside. Kyle Pitts is a movable piece on the chessboard. And then Marvin Mims is this basically focused field stretcher, burner from the slot. And I think that kind of completes that wide receiver pass catching core there in Atlanta. Gives you basically a skill set that you can do anything you need with any of those four guys, Hollins, Pitts, London, or Mims. So, yeah, I love it a ton there for Atlanta. Panthers, Jalen Hyatt. I thought about Cedric Tillman here, the other Tennessee wide receiver, actually. I was like, Terrace Marshall Jr. could probably be possession, enough. Laviska Shenault kind of gives you that gadget threat. Thielen, he's lost a step, but if he's your slot wide receiver, maybe he'll be able to hold his own. I'm like, what is this wide receiver room missing? Well, they're kind of missing that guy who can take the top off the defense. Well, here you go. Here's Jalen Hyatt. He certainly can do that. I mean, ask Alabama about Jalen Hyatt as an over-the-top threat, right? So I think he adds that speed, that vertical speed in specific that this team is missing. And, you pair him up with whoever they take at 1. I am super excited about that. And this team picks, in the top 40, with that second-round pick. So I think they're more than live to land a Jalen Hyatt who, a little bit slight frame, but literally, if he only runs go routes, I think he'll have a Will Fuller type of effect. And a lot of people have comped him to Will Fuller, where, he's on the field and all of a sudden QB's yards per game go up just because defenses have to respect and play that over-the-top speed. And it makes Terrace Marshall Jr. more of a threat in the middle of the field. And Laviska Shenault more room to run as a gadget threat and more space for Adam Thielen to work with. So I think it makes that entire offense better, basically. Then we get to the Saints. I'm going to go Josh Downs here. I just look at that wide receiver room and I'm like, well, Michael Thomas is when he's healthy, really good possession receiver. Chris Olave, I always kind of thought of him as like a high-end 1B, but I think he proved me wrong last year. He can be a 1. But my mindset about that was he's an over-the-top weapon. He's going to win deep down the field, and that's fine. He'll just be Calvin Ridley. But even Calvin Ridley too, but Olave really last year showcased more intermediate game than I thought he had. He was running comebacks, he was running digs, he was doing a whole lot more in that 10 to 20 yard range than I anticipated coming out of Ohio State for Olave. But I'm like, he's still not a yak weapon. Neither is Michael Thomas. Who could be that yards after the catch of demon that just really kind of rounds out that wide receiver room? You already have Rashid Shaheed, who I know does a lot of that too. But Josh Downs is a true slot wide receiver, 4.48 speed, underrated contested catch guy, 38-inch vertical. So good athlete in general and showcases that explosiveness with that type of athletic testing. And he may not have always had to show it a whole lot last year at UNC, but this guy, go back to 2021, he is a yards after the catch threat. And then I'm looking at Thomas is the possession guy, Rashid Shaheed doing the gadget stuff, Olave working intermediate and beyond, kind of as a deep threat as well. And then Downs, who's a good athlete, good route runner underneath, yards after the catch upside, and a sneaky good contested catch guy. I think that's an awesome 4 wide receivers for New Orleans to have and put around Derek Carr. Next, we get to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Darnell Wright makes all the sense in the world to me. And Tristan Wirfs is one of the strongest tackles in football, and that's what made the draft stories about Tyler Linderbaum beating him and wrestling so interesting. Now, there's more to wrestling than just like strength, but that always made that really, really fascinating to me. But nevertheless, Tristan Wirfs, one of the strongest tackles in the NFL. And then Darnell Wright, there's probably an argument to be made. He might be the strongest tackle in this year's class. I mean, good luck. You are not going through either of those two individuals. And Wirfs just straight up one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. And maybe incentivizes Tampa Bay if they're going to pay him to move him to left tackle, because in their mind it's like, okay, you can pay a left tackle that money. I don't think it really matters. Penei Sewell's playing right tackle. He was drafted in the top 7. Like tackles, if you have a bad tackle, teams are going to take advantage of it, whether it's left or right. So Darnell Wright is that complement opposite of Tristan Wirfs. Give Baker Mayfield a shot. Give Kyle Trask a shot, or maybe a quarterback if they do end up going there. If you draft quarterback round 1, then probably not going to get Darnell Wright. Maybe Hendon Hooker round 2, maybe. But obviously tackle's a huge need right now for Tampa Bay, and I think Darnell Wright, Tristan Wirfs, that you are not moving those 2 tackles, so I really liked it from that standpoint. Then we get to the NFC West. Joe Tittman. Cardinals' interior offensive line right now is a mess. I like Will Hernandez, but like center, left guard, still need to find an upgrade there. And their OC, whose name is now escaping me, is coming from teams that have typically run a lot of wide zone and zone blocking schemes. So having Tittman, who's 6'6", but might be the best moving center in this year's class, feels like a great fit for that offense, and obviously addressing a huge area of need. Rams, Andrew Voorhees, he had the injury and he tore his ACL at the combine, still did the bench reps, so kudos to him. That's pretty awesome. But also the timetable showing he might be ready by fall, so no guarantee he actually misses, more than maybe half the season. He might only miss the first quarter of the season. Who knows? ACL injuries can kind of vary, person to person. But I'm focusing on tape here. 5-year starter, or 5 years of college experience, 4-year starter at USC, and I think NFL ready. And the Rams are looking for an NFL ready guard right now. So to me, you can draft Andrew Voorhees, seamlessly put him into your starting 5, and get an upgrade there on the inside, which the Rams are desperately looking for. 49ers, Blake Freeland. This was another one where it's like, considering they pick at 99, 101, and 102, probably not going to have Blake Freeland on the board, but they could package 2 of those thirds to get up to the second round to get Freeland. Or maybe if he lasts till round 3, maybe just the top of the 3rd round. I can see that playing out. And to me, he's kind of the perfect Mike McGlinchey replacement. Right around the same height and weight, and also movement skills. That's kind of like the immediate calling card after his combine. I was like, this guy's going to be a great zone blocking tackle. And I mean, San Francisco is the wide zone, blocking archetype. I mean, Mike McDaniel's taking it with him to Miami, and Bobby Slowick with him into Houston, right? That's been the Shanahan, bread and butter. So I think Blake Freeland is kind of that perfect Mike McGlinchey replacement. They had to do a little bit of work to get to him, but the replacement there and the fit is seamless. So after 3 offensive linemen, here's the splash for the NFC West. Anthony Richardson to the Seattle Seahawks. Again, he could have gone to Indianapolis, and that fit would have made sense, but Richardson in Seattle, Levis in Indianapolis, I think is a little bit of an easier fit for both sides versus the other way around. Like Will Levis were available at 5. I don't think Seattle thinks about it, honestly. But if it's Anthony Richardson, I definitely think they're thinking about it. And then Bryce Young, I think they're definitely thinking about it then. That would be kind of crazy. And then CJ Stroud, even then, I think there would be some conversations in that war room. But hopefully that explains why I had Levis to Indianapolis, Richardson here. I think Richardson should play right away, but I understand where a lot of people are coming from when they're saying, hey, he probably needs a year or 2. And Geno, the salary guarantees are for the calendar year of 23 to 24, or 2023, that is. So there's a possibility where that's really just kind of a 1 to 2 year starting contract, and maybe that's the exact window Anthony Richardson needs to become more consistent with his feet, more consistent with his accuracy. Again, I'd rather just see him play because he looks like a guy who is a 1 year starter in college, so the only way to fix that is by having him start games. But nevertheless, Seattle could give him the situation where he grows, sits for a couple years. You have Geno Smith, so you're continuing to write out that good story. And really, my thing here with Seattle is like, Geno made y'all a playoff team last year because you needed that upgraded quarterback. You needed to have viable quarterback play to be a playoff team, and you were still the 7th seed, barely sneaking in there. But Geno made y'all a playoff team with everything else that was right there in Seattle. And Geno could do that next year. He could even do it in 2 years. But by drafting Anthony Richardson, you're giving yourself a shot to be playoff competitive for the next decade. And that's where it's like, if he's available there at 5, I think you're hard-pressed not to make that selection. It's the most important and most valuable position in the game, too. So if you can future-proof it and get a guy who can be the Geno Smith replacement, I think you're I don't want to say you're crazy, but I would be questioning your judgment if you didn't at least have him like 1 or 2. Like if it was him or someone else, at least then I can say, okay, it came down to a 50-50 kind of one of these 2 guys type of situation. Anyways, let's talk about the Bears in the NFC North, and this is the final division we'll talk about. Bears, Paris Johnson Jr., they run that zone blocking scheme. That's exactly what Luke Getsy implements for the Bears. So kind of a perfect fit there. And he's OT1. I think they could easily be the team that drafts the first tackle off the board. So I think that matches up perfectly. And yeah, just a big time upgrade. You flip Braxton Jones over to right tackle, or like I said, Penei Sewell drafted 7th overall and plays right tackle, and the Lions have one of the best offensive lines in football. So even if it's Paris Johnson Jr. kind of relearning that right side of the offensive line, footwork, and kind of flipping his whole body from where he was last year, for those who don't know, Paris Johnson Jr. did play right guard 2 years ago at Ohio State, so don't think that move and flip across the offensive line is out of the realm of possibility. Tevin Jenkins plays left guard, Cody Whitehair moves inside to center, and all of a sudden, that Bears offensive line's looking kind of good. So, yeah, I would love this fit there in Chicago. The Lions, Cedric Tillman, he's kind of the exact possession, big body, physical outside wide receiver they don't have. Jameson Williams, for those unfamiliar. But J-Mo could be that over-the-top burner. That's what you draft him for. He's also a good route runner, can work other parts of the field. Like, I think he is an intermediate threat. I think he can be a yak weapon, too, because give that dude the ball in his hands and he's got rockets up his ass. Like, that dude will fly and make big plays happen. And then Cedric Tillman, just to kind of do the dirty work, right? First down, kind of chain mover here. He versus Rashee Rice, he's much more of the prototypical possession X when it comes to his frame. And I know he was playing a little banged up in 2022, and I feel like that was why I was a little bit lower on him to start. And then hear people talking about the 2021 film and his performances. Then I'm like, all right, I'll check it out. And he just looks a little bit more spry. It looks like there's a little bit more to his game than being the big, lumbersome, box out, possession catch guy. I think there's a little bit more to his game. Yes, maybe Josh Heupel inflates that, offense a little bit. And also the Josh Heupel offense, these guys have like a handful of routes that they run, and that's it. That's all they need to do, because the offense, he schemes it open for these guys. So know what you're going to do and do it really well, and we're going to be fine. So could he add a little bit more to that route tree? Sure. But I think with Amon-Ra St. Brown's the volume guy of the slot, he's the number one target. Jameson Williams, who you can do a lot with, but, most people are going to think of him as that over-the-top speed threat. And then Cedric Tillman, if he can just work the intermediate parts of the field, be the contested catch guy, move the chains, I think that's a really, really good wide receiver trio in Detroit. Then for the Packers, Jackson Smith-Njigba. This fit is undeniable, because I like Christian Watson and I like Romeo Doubs, but I like them a whole lot more if they're your secondary and the tertiary weapon. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, kind of like we're talking about with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I've even talked about Jackson Smith-Njigba. You look at his measurables, and he's almost like a little bit better than Cooper Kupp. And it's like, oof, man, if he could be Cooper Kupp, live out of the slot and be the number one option for a team. And then Christian Watson becomes this guy who, throw him a drag route and he might take it to the house. Oh, and also he runs away from every DB once you get 30 yards down the field. So, yeah, as long as he reels it in, doesn't drop it, that's a big play waiting to be made. And Romeo Doubs he's an assassin as a route runner. He just drops some of the most unbelievable passes I've ever seen. Like, his hands are more stone than concrete. Like, I don't know. But I think if Jackson Smith-Njigba becomes the volume guy and they get him at 15, I don't know if they'd make this pick. But if there's an offseason where Gutekunst is going to do it, it's going to be the offseason where they move on from Aaron Rodgers just so he can stick it to A-Rod one last time. And if they add JSN, I think he'd easily be their wide receiver 1. And then Watson becomes the 2 and an explosive wide receiver 2. Big plays waiting to happen every time he touches the ball. Dobbs becomes this third option. But, man, if he cleans up the drops, he's one hell of a third option. And all of a sudden it's like, dude, Jordan Love, I mean, you got weapons to work with. If you don't make the best of this, we know you are the problem. And then whoever we bring in to replace you, they're going to have a lot of toys to play with at their disposal. So would love if Green Bay did this, but considering this is offensive fits, I have to talk about an offensive player. Do I think Green Bay will do it? Ultimately, I don't think they will, but I would love to be wrong. And then the Vikings, Tank Dell. So depending on how many 3 receiver sets Kevin O'Connell ultimately chooses to implement, and the only reason I question that is they bring in Josh Oliver, who's kind of this mainly blocking tight end, $7 million a year, and I'm like, that's kind of a little bit more than just being like a blocking number 2 tight end. Like, it feels like they have kind of a role in mind for him. So that point aside, if they do run a lot of 3 receiver sets, which Kevin O'Connell did in LA, and they did a fair amount last year, Tank Dell in the slot with Justin Jefferson on the outside, that's going to be a lot of fun. I think KJ Osborne would be fine on the outside. I think Tank Dell would be fine on the outside, honestly. A lot of people are calling him slot only, but I think with a 6-foot wingspan and his release sets, this guy will be fine. And if somebody misses at the line of scrimmage pressing Tank Dell, good luck, because it's 6 the other way for Minnesota. If you miss on Tank Dell, it's a touchdown. Sorry. So some boomer bust there. But that over-the-top speed, if they can set up bunch formations where Tank Dell is just running a streak and basically is serving as a clear out for Justin Jefferson, he's already one of the best route runners in football. And he can go from 0 to 100 just as fast as he goes from 100 to 0, which is insane. That's what makes him so lethal in the intermediate parts of the field. But adding that that legitimate over-the-top burner that could be that clear-out guy, makes Justin Jefferson's life that much easier. But also a great yak weapon. He was a volume guy at Houston despite his size, north of 100 catches, right around 1,400 yards, a lot of touchdowns too. I think this guy can legitimately be the second fiddle, and I love me some Tank Dell. So finding that second option in that Minnesota offense would be awesome. Now, the problem is Minnesota doesn't have a second-round pick. I think Tank Dell goes round 2, but I could see where, because he's a little bit smaller, not the biggest, heaviest guy, maybe he does linger till round 3. So I'm stretching the rules a little bit here. It's not impossible he makes it to round 3. I think it's a little doubtful, but nevertheless, whoever that other wide receiver could be for Minnesota, that's what they should try to find, whether it's round 1 or round 3. If you find that second wide receiver, take the workload off the shoulders of Justin Jefferson just a little bit, that's when this offense gets really complete. And then that's when the NFC North is up for grabs with Rodgers leaving, and maybe Minnesota, if they get that second wide receiver, is the front runner. But that is going to do it for my favorite offensive fits in this year's NFL draft for all 32 teams. Leave me your favorite fits down below in the comments section, whether it's your favorite team or it's another team where you're like, dude, this guy goes here, they're going to be a force. They're going to be scary. Love to hear your fits down below in the comment section. Also, give me one for your favorite squad. Whoever that team may be, let me know. And then who's your favorite potential first round, second round, or third round fit for your favorite squad? And explain to me why. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. But hopefully you all enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. And subscribe if you are new, looking for more football content in your life. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.